Welcome everyone to our video podcast. The subject today is to protect or not to protect, a simple approach to streamlining your claims process. I'm Jerry Dixon, head of partnerships here at ProShip, with over 20 years in the logistics and supply chain industry, and I am the host of Parcelcast Unwind, so please go check us out on your favorite streaming app. Now, today's video podcast is a little different and very special. Today, I am not only joined by Justin Kramer, the VP co-founder of ProShip, but Justin and I have the honor of being joined by our friends, Nathan Kelleher and Darren Milne. Nathan, Darren, and Justin, so happy to have you here. Please introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thanks, Jerry. Yes, Nathan Keller, founding partner of True Attitude. Our business is involved in advisory for a lot of early stage businesses, but also working a lot with the logistics and especially the parcel logistics industry. 20 plus years in logistics, and we were in a business that exited in this space. So it's been a long ride, but I'm very excited to be here, Jerry.
Darren?
Yeah, hi, and thanks, Jerry. Thanks for the introduction. My name's Darren Milne. I've spent the last 37 years in the insurance space, and one of the key things for us was we concentrated heavily in the logistics space back here in Australia, and there was always this issue with not being able to protect our carriers and or their customers. And we've come up with a solution which we're going to hear more about in the coming podcast. Thank you.
And Justin.
Yeah, Justin Kramer, as you mentioned, VP and co-founder of ProShip. I have designed, sold, implemented small parcel shipping basically across the globe. I've been lucky enough to work on implementations that ship as little as a few packages a day, all the way up to implementations that will exceed 3 million a day. Implementations are just from a single facility, all the way up to those that span 4 continents.
Thank you, gentlemen. So happy to have all of you here. Regarding our topic, in the past, insurance, or as we like to call shipping protection, struggled with managing multiple carriers and their varied claim processes. Larger enterprises handle their insurance or negotiate with their carriers, but the small and medium-sized businesses find insurance expensive, time-consuming. They waste hours of time chasing carriers and insurers. And today we want to highlight the benefits of insurance and introduce ShipSafely's user-friendly process for insuring shipments across all carriers, improving the customer experience. Now, we all have dealt with porch piracy. We dread it, we fear it, we hate it. And shipping protection can't stop it from happening, but this discussion today may help alleviate some of our fears. We will discuss more on porch piracy as we move through our conversation. But for now, Darren, could you please explain what shipping protection is and why you think it's important?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Shipping protection, or, commonly known as insurance, provides cover to the shipper against packages that are damaged, lost, or stolen throughout the delivery process. I guess one of the most important things is that shippers will not be out of pocket should they select to insure, and they're covered up to the full invoice value, including freight, and thus creating a second sale or a reimbursement. It's up to the shipper to decide whether or not they would like either or. So that's in short what we do. 3 main points, for us to consider is our service is to the shipper. We have a all-in-one process where, they can select as they choose different parcels. We have an online claims portal where, the shipper comes and has one point of contact, and we guarantee to settle our claims within 48 hours. ShipSafely, we operate a distribution platform which is easily integrated into ProShip's shipping software and gives the option, as I said before, on every parcel or selected parcels for the shipments to be protected. I'll give an example of a claim. One of our directors had some luggage delivered to his home, and it turned up and it was damaged. He then went overseas. I think that, within the next 2 or 3 days, he had to go and buy another bag. And when he got back, he said to his wife, can you get onto it and try and get our money back or get a replacement? The drama that he went through, all the hassle of trying to get his bag repaired. It was, send us the bag, we'll give you a quote to fix it. And he's going, what do you mean a quote? Anyway, for $150, he said, it's all too hard. That's an example of where we would come in and just take control of the entire process.
That is crazy. Okay, Justin, before we get too deep, break down what insurance or shipping protection is, especially in regards to carriers like UPS and FedEx, and maybe what third-party shipping protection can provide that will help shippers protect their shipments.
Of course, of course. Because as we do look at it nowadays, I don't know that very many shippers actually think too much about their insurance. There's really four options that are out there right now. Number one, you have the carriers themselves. They will provide a level of insurance, many of them in North America giving you the first $100 free. But if you have anything that is above $100 in value, they're not insuring at that unless you specifically ask for it. So carrier insurance has been one of the more popular things that we've seen over the last 20 years. Many companies, though, choose not to have any insurance at all. In the event of a lost, damaged, or stolen item, the shipper may just be completely out of pocket, not only to replace the item, but for the new shipping associated with that. What we did see gain a little bit more popularity, but this is usually with the very large shippers, is self-insurance. But of course, with self-insurance, you have to have personnel on staff that are going to manage that, maintain it, and ensure that you're actually not losing money in the process. So it's costing you a lot of internal staff just to do that. And then finally, we have external shipping protection, right? This would be your third parties. This would be where your multi-carrier shipping software would be able to, as it's committing shipments to a manifest, can also be informing a third party as to the origin, destination, and the expected value of that shipment. And the idea is that this allows us to go company to company, and most importantly, keep the recipient, keep that end user, right? Keep this individual who is trying to get just a piece of luggage, keep them out of the process. They shouldn't have to call an insurer or anything like that. They should be able to go back to you as the supplier, as the retailer, and you're going to handle the problem behind the scenes, and they just get the appropriate solution, which might be a new piece of whatever they purchased. It might be a return and repair. It might be whatever. But the idea is that the more friction that you create for your end users, for your customers, the less likely they are to come back. Darren, I'm sure that he is not looking to buy another piece of luggage from that supplier anymore.
It's very true. I mean, he said, I would rather go and rubbish them online than go through another 3 hours of doing this. And, that's not a good experience for anybody.
No.
Exactly.
Now, Nathan, you're a logistics expert as well, and you set up a business that provided this type of protection. Can you tell us about the surveys that you've done and maybe share some experience with the carrier ignored porch piracy?
Definitely, Jerry. So, yes, we had a business called Tamando, based out of Australia. The business has now been sold and gone. It's passed on, but that was 12 years ago, believe it or not. We were running surveys about this topic, and it drew us to actually take on insurance. And it wasn't anything like what Ship Safely has. This was all third party. It was brokered insurance, but we had to do something. Our surveys came back and it astounded us. 84% of clients at that stage or retailers basically came back and said that 84% of their customers would rather leave if they have a bad experience. And we were like, well, if we're the ones producing labels and we're the ones selecting the shipper and we're going to be the cause of them losing 84% of their customers, we have to do something. And that's why we made that change. And it was very obvious to us at bad experience. The fact we're still talking about it 12 years later, and there's been a lot of water under that bridge, and it's still not resolved. It's getting better, but it's still not resolved, and it needs to be, because the cost of customer acquisition is huge, and it's getting even higher. It's getting tougher and tougher. And Google AdWords and everything was what it used to be. It's become tougher, and social media has made it even more so. And probably one of the biggest driving factors of that was the pandemic. So anyone who's had anything delivered pre-pandemic, there was signature on delivery. There was a number of factors that would cut down on theft and porch piracy. During pandemic, suddenly there was no contact. It felt like every carrier took the opportunity to actually remove the delivery from the experience. You're paying door to door, suddenly it was left out the front. And I felt the sting of this. I had a Christmas presents delivered 2 years ago, and they were delivered at the front of I'm in a block of flats here. They were delivered to the block of flats, and every parcel that was delivered by that driver was stolen. It was taken away. The guy stole everything out of there and then fly tipped it. And then I got a fine from the local government for dropping a parcel because it had my name on it. So that was the thing. But they would have got a lot of fines that day, because when they showed the photo, there was about 15 parcels that had been ripped open and just thrown into a flower bed. So this is the type of experience that, obviously, from mine. Now, I haven't been back to that store because their response wasn't good. I had to go and fight it myself. So I had to go to the council, fight it, had to get a proof that it hadn't been delivered properly. This took me weeks, absolutely weeks. And it wasn't a good experience. And I knew the industry and I knew what was happening. I can't even imagine someone who's never been in the logistics industry, how bad they would feel. And they're never going to come back.
No. Darren, that type of safety is what Ship Safely covers, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we take care of the claims process from the start to the finish. There is one point of contact. Doesn't matter which carrier you use. We take care of it, and as the within our 48-hour guarantee, 99% of claims are settled within that 48 hours. We can't muck around. It's up to us. If we feel that we have a case against the carrier, we can potentially go back to the carrier, but that's up to us to deal with. And from our experience, shippers that try to deal with the claims process themselves, the lost hours, the hidden costs behind their staff chasing, if they're lucky, it's a 6-week, 8-week process. Meanwhile, the shipper's lost 10 packages. What's he going to do? And that's all out of his cash flow and out of his bank account. So, that's one thing. Carriers don't cover a lot, as Justin mentioned before. Sometimes up to $100. But then you're in that whole queue of 6 to 8 weeks later. And there's definitely no cover for the porch piracy. As Nathan said, they've changed their entire process. They've removed and have tried to absolve themselves of being required. So, the cover that we provide is, you can ship anywhere in the world. The only exceptions for deliveries to the US sanctioned countries, as everyone would expect, as in Russia, as an example. If things go to Russia, our system puts up the red flags and there's no insurance, offering that will pop up.
So there is international coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from an international perspective, the more Western, the North America, UK, Euro, Australia, as an example, Asia Pacific, you could almost say, their logistics processes are reasonably, sturdy, and they're pretty good. So there's like the standard rate that you would pay within North America. We include that.
Nate, what's the process when it comes to international in regards to Ship Safely, and how does it maybe defeat human error?
Yeah, certainly, Jerry. So, looking at it, you'd think cross-border and, parcels traveling from, say, the US across to Europe would be more prone to loss, typically. But you'll find that's not the case. What happens if anyone's familiar with the cross-border process is everything's manifested. So every time something passes through a checkpoint, every parcel has to be accounted for, otherwise every parcel gets stopped, and it's just a customs process. And it's a security thing as much as a theft. I think customs aren't too worried about theft. They're worried about what's in there and what's not in there. But what it does do, certainly from an insurance perspective, is allow Ship Safely to be able to insure these parcels and feel confident that they're getting the same level of tracking. So actually the riskiest part from a theft and loss perspective during this process is actually normally the first and last mile, because that's where humans are touching it unsupervised. Normally in the cross-border, everything's under a camera, so it's a lot harder for it to go missing. Damage wise, obviously there's a higher chance of damage, every more people that touch it or more movement it has. However, if you were to to look at the aspect of human error. Human error comes into it at probably a lot less during that cross-border component, because you have a lot of technology being involved there. That's probably gives people a bit more comfort that if you're looking at insuring globally, you're not going to get it from a normal insurance agent, because the way they operate, as the ship safely can, because it's the way that it's structured.
I think that you've got it right. That comfort of the customer, right? Already, if you're ordering something cross border, you already have some concerns. How long is it going to take to actually clear customs? Are they going to hold it? Am I going to have any additional duties and taxes? Heaven forbid, at the end of all of that, you end up with porch piracy, or the gentleman who's bringing it to you trips and it crushes on your steps or something of that nature. I think as a retailer who is offering cross-border, international shipping, you can add some comfort, some insurance, not really the word I was looking for there, but some assurance. There we go. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Some assurance that if I'm taking a risk, getting something from another country, that I am not actually taking as large a risk as I think I am. Yes, there may be some inbound, outbound, some customs solutions, but if it's damaged, I'm going to be made whole. If it's if we have porch piracy, I'm going to be made whole, right? And I can therefore trust that retailer, and I'm more likely to go back to them if I have a cross-border need again.
Yeah, and look,
Yeah, correct.
I mean, I've got a point on that. You know, I ordered something cross-border to Australia from North America, you know, and I think it was like, I don't know, $60 or $70. It never arrived. Surprise, surprise. You know, what is law in the US doesn't necessarily apply to anywhere else in the world, including whether it's a Western country, an Eastern Bloc country, or wherever. It doesn't necessarily apply the same laws. And, you know, I just gave up. I sent 2 emails and it was just too hard, you know, and, you know, the money's down the drain. So, you know, not a great experience, but am I likely to go and buy the same item again from somewhere locally? No, I'm not. So, and it was probably coming out of China, you know, in any case.
Yeah. And one of the factors too, like we were working with, in the past, working with companies like Nike and Apple, and we spoke to them extensively. These are massive companies that are sending a lot of parcels, and, you know, they want their brands on everything because their brand is their value. However, branding parcels and putting brands all over them aren't great, you know, and domestically that's more likely to happen. You know, they'll go that extra mile. On the cross border, everything becomes quite generic. So the packaging becomes generic. So if you're getting, you know, 1,000 packages coming from, you know, multiple sources, and they all arrive at a depot on a cross-border shipment, you don't know where they come from. You don't know which company they're from. You don't have enough time, if you're someone who wanted to do something and take a parcel, to stop and have a look. So, you know, we found that also cut down a lot on the cross-border as well, in the fact that it is quite generic. So when it gets to the other end, it's generic as well. But if you've got, you know, big Nike logo blazoned across it, the chances of porch piracy is pretty high. You know,
Steal me.
Yeah.
Steal me, basically. What size? They may as well just put the size to save. You know, they should put the size, because then the person's less likely to steal it. But yeah, that's definitely a factor in it as well.
Yeah, even in hubs, even in carrier hubs, there's sometimes there are bad apples.
Yeah.
Or bad actors, as everybody likes to say now. And they see those branded packages, they disappear. So it's a real thing. We don't recommend people like that put those types of brands on their packages, because, like you said, Nate, it's just a big sign: steal me.
Exactly. So yeah, it's been tried and true, and it's definitely decreases the pilferage and porch piracy if you remove it. So yeah.
So you guys were mentioning earlier about the EU and North America, and there are differences. And what are some of those differences, Nate? Like Europe has more carriers, et cetera.
Yeah. So I've got a unique experience, obviously being Australian. So I experienced what happens in Australia and the vast, difference between where all the cities are there. And then obviously working very closely with the US and with ProShip for many years. So working closely with FedEx and UPS. And then you look at Europe, where I'm obviously based in London now. They're all very different markets, and part of it is because of the carriers. So US is obviously dominated by UPS, FedEx, USPS primarily. There's a lot of domestic carriers now, but that's primary. The thing is with UPS and FedEx is it travels through their network and it's scanned by them the whole time. So it's the chances of things going missing are low, but the chances, I guess, of damage and all that goes up, and it doesn't stop porch piracy, of course. In Europe, it's a lot more fragmented. So there's most people have at least 5 or 6 carriers in their portfolio, which means they've all got different rules. So when you're trying to do a protection internally or doing it with carriers, you've potentially got 5 or 6 different rules on how you can claim if something goes wrong. That is very difficult for a retailer to manage. How do you manage that to your consumer when they purchase? You can't say, well, we chose to use Yodel, so therefore you don't get insurance on this one. Sorry, that just isn't how it works. So someone's out of pocket here. This is where the protection kicks in, where ShipSafely can help, because it's standardized across. It doesn't matter who you use, it's coverage. That's a big factor. When you're looking at the fact that when things are delivered and you've got customer service, you don't want them contacting carriers and the such. You want to be able to manage that customer experience yourself. So I think all these factors mean that depending where you are in the world, you've got different things you've got to account for. If you've got one single provider here, you don't have to worry about that. It's a constant experience, and the amount that it cuts down on the number of emails, calls, etc. It all adds up. It's a massive cost to any business.
I'd like to add to that if I could. So as we've seen, Pitney Bowes just a couple of days ago, they released their survey for 2023. ProShip, we've been doing our own analysis, and what we found is across 2023, significantly more shippers diversified their carrier service levels. So are we at the level of Europeans? No, definitely not. But where you used to expect carrier diversification meant you had a whole 3 carriers. Now what we're actually seeing at the high end of our enterprises is 9 or more carriers. Okay.
Yeah.
We are seeing significantly more fragmented distribution final mile carriers. And so what it means is that, and I think I just have to point this out to our listeners, back when you only had 2 people to talk to, your UPS rep and your FedEx rep, it was very different to try to get insurance. But now if you've got, like I said, our average is 9 carriers at the high end. Okay. 9 carriers that are high volume shippers, I should say. You no longer have those. We're seeing a lot of turnover with the carriers. We're seeing a lot of volatility. Those of you who've listened to some of my podcasts in the past, volatility has been a key word going on. So if you are looking to make a customer whole, it's a lot easier if you're doing that with one interface rather than, just like ProShip's purpose in life is to allow you to have one interface to ship all 40 plus carriers in North America. Likewise, it becomes a lot easier to insure all those packages with a single source.
Those are great points, Justin. And when you're a shipper that has 9 carriers, who's liable for that? Like, that's a lot of work. So Darren and Nate, can you explain that, without ShipSafely, what are the sellers liable for?
So currently the retailers are responsible for everything. So they've got to replace the damage. They've got to look after it all. You make the decision. So someone purchases from the shopping cart. Even if they pick insurance and you're using, say, a brokered insurance or something that's just pretty generic, you're still liable for that. So, you're picking the carrier, you're picking how you get it to the customer. You can't turn around and say, well, we picked these guys, but they didn't deliver it. I'm sorry. I've heard that for years. That's the worst customer experience you could ever have. You took the money, you're liable. Best example where I saw this change in the market was when Amazon started taking hold and stopped being a bookshop, and started to actually become an e-commerce or create e-commerce for the market. And they turned around and realized this was happening, so they just started giving money back. They went, it's easier to give you £25 back than for us. It's going to cost us £60 to resolve it, or dollars, I should say.
And debited straight to the retailer's account.
UK too long this. So yeah, exactly. And they just sort of went, we'll just give you the money back. It's quicker, So they sort of have a limit, and this is difficult to do with a carrier claim process, because carriers typically, while they might pay back, it will take weeks. But in weeks' time, you'll get crickets at the other end of that phone. That customer's moved on and they've gone elsewhere. So I think that's probably one of the keys that you look at there.
No, correct. And from our perspective, or from a law perspective, carriers in general, they don't accept any responsibility. When somebody signs the consignment note, that consignment note says all care, no responsibility. And unfortunately, not every seller is aware of that, and they just think, well, if the seller loses it, we can go back and claim there, or they can go in for the $100 and get the crickets at the end of the phone after 8 weeks. So I mean that's something for us that's why we exist, to try and remove that.
And if Ship Safely is selected, Justin, what's the difference in your eyes?
So there's two things. Number one, I want to say that, and again, any good multi-carrier shipping software should work this way. It should be transparent to the warehouse or to the store where that goods are being packaged and shipped. Okay, so this should have no impact on operations. What it will have impact on is customer service, right? This does allow you to automatically apply this insurance. And so in the event of damage, porch piracy, something of that nature, your customer service should be given operational steps that allow them to release a replacement, a refund, whatever the case may be, a reship, something of that nature, usually on that first call. Because if I can make one call and I know I'm going to get the response that I'm looking for, I know I'm going to be made whole, well, I'm going to go back to that customer. I'm going to go back to that retailer every single time.
Yeah, no, that's our experience as well. I mean, that's once again, that's why we exist. For us, if Ship Safely is selected, no one's out of pocket other than the insurer, which is us. So, but that's our business, and that's our risks, and that's what we take.
The reality is, and let me go back to one of the things I was alluding to, but not really covering, which is friction, right? The friction that it takes with a lot of carriers in order to get that costs back or recover any costs is extremely high. And if we make it high enough, your own team isn't going to want to go after it. So eventually it's just going to get so bad that you're going to take the loss. And we don't think that's good for we have the ProShip side. We don't think that's good for any of our customers, right? We would prefer that all packages be delivered when expected, with no porch piracy, no damage whatsoever. But we do know that the reality is that things happen, right? And I think the way we make the customer and the shipper whole is really a key to a better long-term strategy, especially for retail.
Definitely. And I'll just put an example there of something crazily that I've heard recently. So there was a major retailer in the UK who sits every year with their carrier and negotiates based on their losses, damaged, etc., their shipping rates, and it gets accounted in there. They add it all up, then they take it off how many parcels they shipped, and then they reduce their rates for the year based on that. Like, if you're getting to that point to fix this solution, that is absolute lunacy. And I cannot believe the carrier adheres to it, but it's a major client, so they do it. So every year their rates change based on that. And I just thought that was the most hilarious thing I've ever heard of. So I was like, so you're just accepting, instead of fixing the problem or addressing, an insurance option, you're just going to reduce your rates and just take a hit. It's quite astounding. It made me giggle.
I mean, that sort of brings up the whole, what are the hidden costs for the staff? Justin, you've alluded to it. Nathan, you're saying, we're all sort of speaking the same language here, and it's the hidden costs, the hours required by the staff, many shippers, there's different processes for different shippers. I mean, there's one customer of ours in the US, they have 17 people on their claims team, and they're looking at us. And where they're not across the line right this minute, but they're looking at us to reduce that down to 3. And that's an example of where we can really add value.
Yeah, because no one wins in these processes. You can feel as a consumer that you've won, but you've taken down everyone on the other side of the process. Or as a retailer, you can say, well, we know we delivered it, so we're going to prove. Well, they're never going to shop there again. You just lost the customer. So there's no winners in this scenario. You're better off having a solution like Ship Safely, where it gets resolved, that there's no friction, as Justin said, and you can just continue on. And we have very seamless process when it comes to car insurance, home insurance, life insurance. I don't sit there and barter over my life insurance, on a yearly basis, to find out what's happening. I just don't. I probably should. I'm sure we all should, but we don't do that. So why are we doing it when it comes to shipping, shipping protection and shipping insurance? So I think just putting it in place and having that peace of mind that someone is adhering to what you've set and running with it gives you comfort that you're actually focusing on the customer, not on negative experiences.
Those are great points. It was mentioned, Justin, you had talked about how the average carrier mix is around 9. So as more and more sellers move to using multi-carrier platforms and increasing their carriers and who they use, Ship Safely sounds like it's becoming more relevant. You would agree, Darren, I bet.
Yeah, look, without a doubt, as we've talked about here today, every carrier has the different processes. Sellers are not aware, and the claims team that I was talking about a couple of minutes ago, they don't know what carrier has which process, and, I guess it doesn't look good for anyone in the chain from when sellers just give up, and that does happen. We hear that, day in, day out, they just give up. So, once again, there's customers that are going to walk, as a result of that. So, as I mentioned, we have the one process for all sellers. They come through our claims portal and everything's dealt with.
What's crazy though, because we always worry, you always worry about costs, and I've negotiated rates with both sides, both carriers and retailers over many years. What we're talking about here is the actual cost to insure an average cart size might come in at $3 or $4. The cost of a single phone call in a call center, it can be $16 to $40. Now you've got 6 phone calls to resolve where a parcel's gone or where your t-shirt's got lost. You're now looking at hundreds of dollars in internal embedded costs when you could have just paid $4 and got it delivered and had the whole experience paid for and covered by an insurance. It's absolutely insane. And this is one of the hidden costs in e-commerce and certainly in manufacturing that people don't account for. And sometimes when I've sat there and had these arguments, we're just trying to fathom where these costs gets embedded into operations. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Like, just putting this in will fix every problem you've got in terms of resolving. It will highlight it because there's a lot of data collected here. There's a lot of information to come back to the retailer to find out if that carrier is doing a good job. You want to know if that carrier is not doing a good job. They will never truly tell you the full facts. They're not going to. They will, but not fully. So you can have more control over your experience and the customer experience. And that, I think, is one of the massive opportunities that people have by taking on Ship Safely here.
They want a guarantee.
You want a guarantee. You want visibility. You can have so much visibility in your marketing, your cost of customer acquisition, your click-through rates, your cost of production, manufacture, and then you blow every single thing that you've done out of the water with 4 phone calls because someone left it on the wrong porch. These are the factors, and then you've lost the customer. You did all of that and spent all that money, and then you lose the customer at the end anyway. And you did 0 wrong. The only thing you didn't do would actually insure the products to avoid that problem. So yeah, that's kind of where you end up.
Darren, talk to us a little bit about the ship safely guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, we've named it, aptly so. We've named it the Ship Safely Guarantee. Something goes missing. We may need a police report from time to time. Generally, if it's over $500 in value, or if we suspect fraud. If we suspect fraud, we're generally correct. We've been around in the game, my co-founder and myself for decades, so you smell the fraud. So, and if you normally, and we put disclaimers out there to say that if they're prepared to make a police report, we're prepared to pay the claim. And very, very simple. From our perspective, we work completely different to most insurers. We have to go to, or, the claims team has to come to myself to deny a claim rather than get it approved. Most other insurers work in the complete opposite direction. Our entire process, every one of our claims team, they have full authority, and I will back them to pay any claim that they see fit. And the quicker the better, because that's one of the mantras that we have. An example, we had 2 satellite navigation screens for boats, the big, 17, 18, 19-inch screens. And they were delivered. It was a customer in a regional area who purchased them from a retailer. The retailer sent them out. They arrived at the boat repair place. They were signed for, but they never turned up. So, of course, the carrier says, well, hang on a sec, here we go. We suspect that the driver actually took them, but we don't know that. We spoke to all the parties involved. And, within, I think it was like 26 hours, we'd replaced $6,700 worth of marine screens. Everybody's happy. Everybody wins. There was no, everyone's like, oh, I didn't realize that the insurance money that I paid was going to give me this level of service. And I think that's a really good story for your listeners to be aware about. That's our business. We're in the business of paying claims. If we don't pay claims, we don't have a business.
You either reimburse or reorder the items.
Yeah, in this case, we just reordered another item. We can do that, in consultation with the seller, or we can just go onto their website and, for us, we would say invoice ship safely, ship to, wherever it's got to be shipped to.
And it works in what areas? Is it UK and EU and North American AU?
Yeah, look, I mean, we are licensed to provide an insurance policy anywhere in the world, other than US sanctioned countries, as I did mention before, so, look, I mean, if there's, a lot of parcels, you take the good with the bad in this scenario. If there are a lot of parcels that are going to Eastern Bloc European countries where their logistics are perhaps not as good as what they are in North America, AU, EU, UK, then there's just a bit of a, maybe a slight rate increase, if there's particular sellers that are sending, the bulk of their things to, non-traditional Western countries.
So I'm going to ask all of you to give your final thoughts and share with us what your key message is that you'd like to leave with these shippers as they consider these services. Darren, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Jerry. If the sellers, the shippers, I think we all use very different words for retailers, sellers, shippers. I think we've all used all of them, in within here. But from our perspective, Ship Safely is selected. The retailer's not out of pocket, and we take care of all the claims process. We have one process. That's, I guess, my final message, to your listeners and or our potential customers. So yeah.
Darren, how do retailers, shippers, how do customers get a hold of you?
We're on our website. We've got our email addresses and whatever else, it's just, www.ship-safely.com. So that's probably the easiest way.
All right, on to you, Nate.
Definitely. Thanks, Jerry. What I'd probably leave for people, like obviously we've covered a lot of areas and some of this might be foreign, some of it might be very known. One thing's not foreign to certainly retailers is customer experience. And that's what it all comes down to. So the ability for you to provide a customer experience is imperative. The only physical touch in e-commerce at the moment is that final mile delivery at the moment. And when that got taken away, now there's no physical contact with your company. So your company comes down to what happens is, does the parcel get delivered? Was it a good experience? If something went wrong, was it resolved quickly? This is the only experience people have, and that's the only image you have on your company. So you can spend millions on your marketing, you can spend on PR, you can do all the right things, say all the nice things on your website. But if the person doesn't get the parcel and doesn't have a good experience, then it all falls apart. This will stop that. This is somewhat of an elixir for bad experience, and you should implement it. The cost versus the cost of loss is not even a comparison. It's ridiculous to even think otherwise. So we really need to consider what we want our end customer experience to be.
Justin?
As we've seen shipping, especially in North America, change over the last several years, we've seen a great diversification in the number of options we have for delivery. With that, we have found additional friction in the situation, in an operations day-to-day opportunities, and that friction is along a lot of different things, but it's also insurance. So if we can eliminate that piece of friction, if we can make that predictable, and if we can do that without affecting how you're applying labels in the warehouse, how you're applying labels at a store, how you might be sending information to your 3PLs to ship a package. If we can make that consistent across all the different companies that you may choose to use in your carrier diversification process, we have removed a piece of friction from the overall ability to sell and make customers happy. And I think that's the most important thing that listeners should take away is, as one problem has appeared due to an improvement, i.e. more choices and delivery options, there are methods of actually solving that problem.
Good advice, gentlemen. We've learned a lot more about shipping protection than we knew before, and allows us to take a look at protecting our customers and, more importantly, the experience that we give them. So thank you, gentlemen. See you next time.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.